Hello, I am Richard Powers, back at Stockton for the 7th time. And joining me this year, Kendall Miller has been able to come back. She partnered me last year as well. So this year we looked at dances, mostly of the Americas, vernacular dances, folk dances from the grassroots, and one of them, a classic that led to many other walking dances, was the one-step. An American original, began in the ragtime era, simply walking. Half of the dances that I taught this week were freestyle, and half of them, more or less, were sequences. So starting off in the week, we began with freestyle one-step, also to be able to talk about partnering and lead and follow. We'll talk about that later in this review tape. Right now, just some of the figures. The basic one was walking, and the woman walked backwards. The handhold back then was almost anything goes. What we're doing now is only one possibility. Sometimes he would hold her lower, which might be considered wrong today. Anything goes. We said this works better. Sometimes they held hands like this, and sometimes they hugged their partner. But this was the most standard. So, this was the basic. Or promenade, letting your seat forward. Or side steps work. From this we could do grapevines. There's so many grapevines. You already know grapevines. And they work in a one-step. So we also said there are steps that travel, steps that turn, steps that rock or alternate, and steps that cross a foot over. 4 kinds of steps. And we encourage you to think of this in concepts rather than a linear shopping list. So those are some figures that travel. The Yale position, it was called, the banjo position. Yale position is another way of walking. Or it could flip, as in gypsy wine. Maybe you're doing 4 steps at a time. And if you do it 2 at a time, we have a grapevine. And we have lots of other ways of traveling. That was traveling and crossing both, 2 concepts in one step. Traveling and turning are pivots. We were walking along and pivoting smoothly. In our workshop, we encouraged everyone to be accommodating and gentle, not forceful with your partners. So rather than him pulling her into a pivot, he danced around in front of her, let her dance through. It was a very smooth, considerate pivot. And she danced right into him rather than veering away, right into him. Helped turn, helped the whole thing work. So this 2 people working together to make it smoother as opposed to one person grabbing and launching the other. We spent some time on that. Then we also looked at a few other things. If you do some walking in Yale position, 4 steps, and then a grapevine, then walking mat back, and a grapevine, that had the name of the scissor. 4 of each, 4 counts of each. So those kind of things. We also said, from walking here, he could swing her front into a turn, and we have another turning step. This is a Pomander walk, or a Pomander turn, as it's also called. Now, this isn't the concept of turning. We could also turn this way, rocking. So we were walking along with a one-step. He kind of caught her, and he pivoted in place like this, and up. Those are 3 ways of turning. Pivots were the first, and those were the other 2. We also, that was our first rocking step. Another rocking step we had was the classic double hesitation. We go 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe walking 4 steps first, and rock, rock, rock. Different styles were happening then, and we didn't insist on one correct style because this is the vernacular folk process, grassroots. This was before anyone was in charge of the dance. It was pretty much anything goes, fun. So that pretty much covered the basics. We looked at a fancy one. It's called a boat swing. It's a cross step. Cross step in front. These are 3 counts at a time. Crossing 2, 3, crossing 2, 3. And then the best way to get out of tricky steps are side steps to resynchronize and go off walking. So this begins on the other foot, man's left, lady's right with 1 step, and the second step is a cross. And from then on, you're counting in 3s. A boat swing. Or think of it as a cross-step waltz in 4/4 time. And that pretty much covered what we did in the one step.